Hello and welcome to another My NTND marriage video. This time I'd like to talk about name calling. I'm not a fan of name calling. I'm not sure if it's because I grew up in a house where my mum would name call. It was her go-to thing. She always had a name, something she would say that was offensive and hurtful. And I remember growing up feeling quite hurt about that. And in fact, I would say that her words haunted me long after the smacking and things like that. So the smacking was sort of terrible at the time, but the memories kind of faded. I mean, you know what happened and it was there, but the insults lingered. And so because of that, I was never a fan of name calling. In fact, my motto throughout life is, it doesn't matter what you say or do to me, I will not name call or resort to insults as a way of dealing with whatever attack is being sent my way. I know in many autistic relationships, they have dealt with name calling. They've either been teased at school, awful things said to them at home, and then they get married and they're finding that that is a continuum within their marriage. And that's not something that I want to bring to the table. I had a conversation with hubby maybe about 4 years ago now, and we were talking about insults. Something was happening, we were having conversation, and I'd said to him, I have wondered if my calling you names would have made you stop insulting and critiquing me, if my replies would have been to insult you in return. And I said to him, but I hadn't really wanted to do that, even as an experiment. I hadn't really wanted to see what would happen if I started insulting him in return. And I said to him at the time, I said, Lord knows I've wanted to call you names. And he said, really, like what? And I listed a stream of things like, poo head and bum head and, just random things like this. And he was like, oh, I don't think it occurred to him that I had wanted to call him names. I think because I wasn't, he just assumed that there was no drive or desire in me to do so. However, really it's just a matter of me controlling myself, because I certainly have wanted to come out with all manner of offensive remarks in hopes that it would get him to stop critiquing. More recently, we had a situation where we were having a conversation. It was one of those really annoying ones where, you're going around in a circle or he's not listening or however it went, and I said to him deliberately, "Ah, you doink." And he was like, oh, he goes, what? Oh, don't call me that sort of thing, that kind of response. And I said to him, oh, do you mean it's hurtful and offensive if you get called names? And he kind of looked at me and realised that I'd said it deliberately. And I just wanted to see what happened. And admittedly, doink, like it's way down on the totem pole of insults. It's a mild thing to have said, and I was doing it just to see what reaction he would have and how he would feel being on the end of that insult. Because as you know in previous videos, he has been critiquing, fault-finding, insulting, saying hurtful things, etc, 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 to me for years. And as I've said, I haven't resorted to name calling because it's not a thing I care to do. I do know of people who do insult their partners, both on the spectrum and not. And I just feel like that can't be good. It can't be good for your partner to be on the receiving end of that. Even if they're absolutely driving you bananas, I can't see that name calling is going to be the way to resolve the issues. I had a friend who had a partner who had depression. In fact, it's a bit of a funny story, or an interesting story. She had lured him away from his partner online with the promise of wonderful sex, to put it bluntly. And he had fallen hook, line and sinker for this promise, left his wife and moved in with this woman, only to get there and find that she's not at all the person that she says she is, because even if she's giving him glorious sex, she had all these other things going on with her, as we all do, good and bad sides. And I'm not sure, although I'd hazard a guess, to say that he had depression before he met her, and moving in with her exacerbated that depression. And her way of dealing with his depression and his lack of drive and interest in doing anything was to start berating him. And I'd said to her when she was telling me this, that's not okay. I don't think you should say stuff like that. You already know he has depression. Why would you do that to him? That's just not okay. And she was a bit surprised, taken back by my directness. I just thought it was not good. And getting back to the Aspie side of things, where they're picked on a lot, I feel like going into a relationship where you are then picked on even more for the perhaps entirety of your relationship would just be really damaging and awful, and I feel bad for them if they're in that situation. You want to go into a relationship being accepted for who you are. And again, I refer to, say, a blind person. If you're in a relationship with a blind person, unless you're a real poohead, you would not be putting that person down for having faults, for being blind. You know, like maybe they accidentally bump into the table. You wouldn't insult them for that, unless there's something really wrong with you and you're just a meanie, you know. So I don't really get the concept of insulting your Aspie partner because they're on the spectrum and they have flaws and faults and traits and such that are beyond their control. I think it's a mean-spirited thing to do, to be calling people names in any case, let alone if they have a condition or a disability or something like that. There's also the children to consider. Obviously I have a son on the spectrum as well, but even if I didn't have any children on the spectrum, I wouldn't want them watching this dynamic of mum and dad insulting each other. I feel like that's not a good lesson for them to learn growing up. Like, you grow up and insult your partner when you move out of home. I think that's all sorts of wrong. So I have to set a good impression in front of them as well with regards to how I deal with situations within my relationship. So I did have a lot of moments in the early days where we would argue around in a circle trying to resolve an issue and not really getting anywhere, but never resorting to insults. I mean, some of the things he said, I used to think, that's such an ignorant statement. Like, you're the only one who thinks that way. What? How foolish. It's just so silly. He can't possibly know that. And even then, I didn't say moron, ignorant, fool. I didn't call him anything. I just said that's not the truth. That's not the facts of the matter. And so when we have disagreements, in point of fact, they're usually always away from the children. They rarely see them. But if we did do anything in front of the children, I will often turn to being facetious, that is, turning a serious situation into a joke by way of coping, or just try to see the humorous side of things, or walk away, or other coping mechanisms, anything aside from turning around to him and calling him names in front of the children. Our roles as parents is to teach our children how to be good functioning adults, not to teach them all the dodgy ways that you can adult when you're grown up. And so I don't fall into the pattern of name calling. That's the point of this video. I just straight up refuse to, regardless. I mean, there's been a time or two where I've had it on the tip of my tongue, not just with my partner, with anyone. All manner of people be all manner of silly, foolish ways and do idiot things. And even then, I will just bite my tongue. I just do not believe that insults are the way to resolve anything. So please leave a comment below. Are you in a relationship where your partner is insulting you? Or are you the insulter? And if you have or have not decided to indulge in insults, comment below. I'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video.